Her name was Saphira. The kind of name that sounds like smoke, like something you'd only whisper if you wanted to conjure it. I met her during the kind of winter that makes people reckless, too cold to think, too dark to be lonely. She had this way of speaking where everything sounded like a secret, like you were being invited into something exclusive just by hearing her talk. I didn't know what I was getting into. But then again, I never do until it's already too late. We met at a bookstore that hosted poetry nights. I wasn't even there for that. I just wanted a coffee and some quiet. But she sat down beside me like we were old friends, handed me a matchbook with her name and number scrawled inside, and said, "Burn this if you ever want me to stop thinking about you." I laughed. She didn't. The relationship started intense, like waking up mid-dream and not remembering how you got there. She was passionate in a way that felt theatrical, but it made everything else in my life seem muted by comparison. She'd make me playlists where every song was a warning. She'd write me notes and slip them into my books. One just said, "I see the way you sleep. It's too peaceful for someone like you." She claimed it was a joke. I was hooked. For the first couple of months, I ignored the signs. The way she memorized every contact in my phone. The way she asked to see the receipt when I said I'd gone to lunch with my brother. The way she'd go silent when I asked for space, then send me a photo of the moon and say, "We're under the same sky. Stop pretending we're not still connected." It was love, I thought. A twisted, bright kind of love. The turning point was subtle. I don't even remember the fight. Something stupid. Maybe I didn't answer her text fast enough. Maybe I liked someone's Instagram post. But suddenly, her messages changed. She'd say things like, "If I disappeared, would you still think about me?" Or worse, "If you disappeared, I'd still know where to find you." I broke up with her via voicemail. I couldn't do it face to face. I was scared, not of her hurting me physically, but of what she'd say to make me stay. I knew she'd have the perfect words. She always did. She didn't respond. Not at first. A week passed. I slept better, ate better, started going for walks again. I thought maybe she'd finally burn the matchbook. Then the first note arrived. It was on yellow paper, the kind used for grocery lists. Folded neatly, no envelope. No stamp. Just my name in red ink. Inside, it said, "I miss how your breathing changed right before you'd fall asleep. I've been practicing." I laughed nervously. Told myself it was old. Something she'd written before the breakup and just hadn't delivered. Then came the second one. "You always check the oven twice before leaving. Once with your hand, once with your eyes." That's cute. Now I knew it wasn't old. It wasn't recycled affection. It was observation. I installed a security camera at my apartment door. Started keeping the blinds closed. Bought a can of pepper spray and kept it by the bed. I even changed the locks. I didn't tell anyone what was happening. How do you explain that someone's watching you, not from across the street, but from somewhere inside your life? 2 weeks later, I moved across town. Found a sublet on short notice. Paid cash. Didn't even tell my coworkers. Just disappeared. I didn't hear from her for nearly a month. And then, just when the air was starting to feel safe again, it happened. A small envelope under my doormat. No name. Inside was a Polaroid. It was me walking from the back entrance of my new building. Taken from behind, like a wildlife photo. I was wearing a jacket I'd bought after I moved. Holding a grocery bag. My earbuds were in. On the back of the photo, written in pencil, it said, "Your shoulders slouch when you're tired. Straighten up, darling." I moved again. This time to a shared building with a security guard in the lobby. Told them I was concerned about an ex. They logged every visitor. I bought blackout curtains. Changed my email. Got a new phone. Deleted everything, Twitter, Facebook, even my Spotify. I became invisible. But Saphira didn't need the internet to find me. 6 weeks of silence. 6 beautiful, boring weeks. Then, one night, I came home from work to find a sticky note on my bathroom mirror. It hadn't been there when I left that morning. I knew that for sure. The note said, "I don't like the beard." That's when I cracked. Because the beard was new. Less than 2 weeks old. No photos. No selfies. My webcam was covered with tape. No one besides my boss had seen me on video, and I'd worn a mask for that call. I shaved it off that night. Not because I was scared. Not consciously, anyway. But because I couldn't stand the idea that she was still watching me and still commenting like she had the right. The next morning, I found another note. Tucked under my windshield wiper. Better. That was the day I went to the police again. Showed them everything. The photos, the handwriting, the timestamps on my security system. They said it wasn't enough for a restraining order. No threats. No damage. Just notes. I stopped sleeping. I slept with my shoes on. My phone gripped in one hand. Every creak of the floorboards made my breath catch in my throat. One night, I woke up convinced someone had just been standing in the room with me. The air felt wrong. Thick. Touched. I checked every window, every closet. Nothing. But in the morning, there was a card taped to my front door. Inside was a photo from years ago, me and Saphira at a carnival, smiling like idiots. But her eyes had been scratched out with something sharp. Deep little gouges like pinholes. I didn't pack. I ran. Found a cabin in a town nobody's heard of. Paid 3 months up front in cash. Used a fake name on the lease. Bought a prepaid phone for emergencies. Used a company laptop with a secure VPN and no personal info. Told no one except my older brother where I was. It was quiet there. Too quiet sometimes. No neighbors. Just trees and wind and the sound of my own paranoia. But for once, silence was better than surveillance. I stayed in that cabin for almost 6 months. No notes. No photos. No signs. I let myself believe she was gone. I started hiking again. Cooking. Reading books that weren't about stalking or trauma. I even started writing again, something I hadn't done since we dated, because she always said my writing sounded like lies. Then one night, I woke to the sound of snow crunching outside my window. My rescue dog, a mutt named Brinley, went ballistic. I grabbed a flashlight and ran to the window. Footprints. Shoe prints. They circled the cabin. Every window. Every door. Like someone was walking the perimeter, checking angles. There were no notes. No Polaroids. Just silence. That was worse. Because she didn't need to leave proof anymore. She knew I knew. She knew I'd remember. I packed my things and left before sunrise. I now live in a shared house with 3 roommates, former military guys. Real intimidating types with massive trucks and energy drinks for blood. If she ever comes near this house, I truly believe they'd make her regret it. But that doesn't mean I sleep easy. I was 19 when I met her, and 20 when everything started to unravel. I'll call her Solène, because that wasn't her real name, but it might as well have been. Something elegant, a little haunting, like the way she used to look at me from across the register when we worked the closing shift together. I didn't know it then, but that look would become a kind of curse. I've replayed the whole thing in my head enough times to wonder if maybe I should have seen it coming. But at 19, you're not really trained to recognize obsession. It's easy to mistake it for intensity. We met at a pet store chain in a suburb outside of Salisbury. She was new, transferred from another location, and I was finishing my last year of high school while working weekends. I remember the first time I noticed something was off. Solène would stay after her shift ended, just to watch me finish mine. She didn't talk much at first, just hovered near the aquariums, pretending to look at fish while watching me out of the corner of her eye. It was flattering in a way that felt strange, like being on stage but not knowing what role you were playing. The first few weeks of dating were intense in the way that only first love, or what feels like love, can be. Solène would write me handwritten letters, folded into origami shapes. She texted constantly, sent playlists titled things like "Songs That Remind Me of the Way You Breathe," and asked to meet my mom on our second date. I laughed it off. Who doesn't like feeling wanted? By month 3, things had changed. Not suddenly, more like the way dusk turns into night. I'd get dozens of missed calls if I didn't answer my phone during a meal. If I played video games with my friends, she'd send passive-aggressive messages like, "Guess I'm not important tonight." She hated not knowing exactly where I was, who I was with, and what I was doing. I once muted her during a Discord session, and came back to find 47 missed texts and 1 voicemail, where she sobbed like she was being murdered. When I called back in a panic, she told me I made her feel invisible. Still, I stayed. I thought maybe I could help her calm down, become more stable. That's how it always starts, right? You think your love will fix someone. But love doesn't fix people. It only gives them a front row seat to your destruction. The breaking point came in early spring. I told her I needed space. I didn't break up with her, not yet. I just said I wanted to focus on finishing school, maybe hang out with my friends again, maybe just breathe. She showed up at my house an hour later. No warning. Just rang the bell and stood there with puffy eyes and a sketch pad full of portraits she'd drawn of me from memory. It would have been sweet if it hadn't felt like she'd been practicing for a funeral. I tried to ease her out of my life, but Solène didn't do quiet endings. She started waiting for me in the parking lot of my work. Every shift, I'd come outside and find her leaning on the hood of her car, arms folded, like she belonged there. One time she blocked my car door with her body and refused to let me leave until I explained why I hated her. I told her we were done. I don't even remember what she said. I just remember that look. Her face didn't crumple like someone who's heartbroken. It stretched like a mask losing its grip. Her eyes went flat. Her voice went syrupy and calm, too calm. She said, "You think this is over, but you're not done learning who I really am." 2 days later she messaged me saying she was going to file a lawsuit for emotional trauma. She claimed I had led her on, made promises, and violated her trust. It was a bluff, I think, but she sent fake screenshots of messages I'd never written and claimed her father was a lawyer. She said she could destroy me if I didn't meet her in person to talk like adults. I should have called someone, a friend, my mom, a lawyer, the cops. But instead, I sat in her car one last time. It was dusk, and the parking lot behind the store was mostly empty. She smelled like vanilla lotion and cigarettes, and she was crying when I got in. I told myself I was doing this to end it clean. She talked in circles. Same manipulative language. "No one will ever love you the way I do. You're just scared of how real this was." I said I needed to go, and she froze. Her phone lit up. Her dad was calling. She looked at the screen, then at me, and smiled like a coin flipping. "If you leave, I'll pick up and tell him to start the paperwork." I didn't say anything. I just went to open the door. It was locked. I reached for the switch, and she lunged, grabbed my wrist with both hands, and dug her nails in so hard that I bled through my sleeve. I told her to let go. She didn't. Her eyes were dead. I don't know how else to describe it. She didn't look hurt or angry. Just vacant. Like she wasn't even in the car with me. I yanked my arm, but she wouldn't let go. Her nails peeled skin. I panicked and pulled her toward me, using her weight to shift her off balance onto the passenger seat. That gave me just enough time to twist the lock, open the door, and get out. I ran to my car. She screamed after me, first sobbing, then full-on howling like an animal in a trap. I drove home faster than I ever have. My hands were shaking the whole way. I kept replaying her face, those eyes, the way she'd gripped me like she was holding onto a cliff edge. That night, I tried to forget. I smoked a little, played GTA, tried to drown the paranoia in cheap gunshots and fake chaos. At one point I thought I heard a car engine outside, but I chalked it up to the game. Maybe the weed made me twitchy, I told myself. Then came the tap. A soft one on my window. My room is on the first floor, the window right next to my desk. I froze. The blinds aren't great, and I knew someone outside could probably see me clearly. I held my breath. Maybe it was nothing. Another tap. Then a voice. My name. Her voice. Solène. I felt every nerve in my body freeze like it was plunged in ice water. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. But she knew I was there. She started talking again, pleading at first. "I just need to talk." Then accusing. "You coward. You can't hide in there forever." I still didn't move. My phone was across the room, charging. Then came the banging. Not tapping. Fists against the glass. I finally snapped. I opened the door and yelled at her, asked what the hell she thought she was doing, why she was stalking me in the middle of the night. She stood there, in a hoodie now, crying again. She asked for her sweater back. Like that was why she was here at 2 a.m. I told her I was calling the cops. That's when she broke. Screaming. Crying. Dropping to her knees in the grass. But that's not the part that haunts me. It was what I saw behind her. To her left, just beyond the glow of my porch light, was the thick tree near the front of our yard. And from behind it, a figure stepped out. Slow. Hooded. Still. My heart dropped. I moved slightly, and Solène noticed. She grabbed my arm again, trying to pull me back. Her nails were digging again, and the hooded figure, whoever it was, started running. Toward me. I slammed the door so hard it nearly broke the frame. Her arm was still partly in the way. She screamed. I shoved it back and locked the bolt just as the figure reached the porch. I heard footsteps on gravel, the sound of a car door opening, an engine revving. Then silence. I grabbed my phone and dialed 911, holding it up to the window so they could see. I think that's the only reason they fled. I met Kevin on Hinge. His profile was full of shirtless hiking pics and captions like, "Looking for someone to share the summit with." I rolled my eyes at first, but he was hot, charming, and surprisingly funny in chat. We flirted, swapped Spotify playlists, and after 3 days of texting, he asked if I wanted to go for a hike that weekend. Something scenic, not too crowded, he said. I know this beautiful trail just outside the city. Total hidden gem. I hesitated. I'm not the go into the woods with a stranger type, but I'd already FaceTimed him. He seemed normal, confident but not pushy, and something about him made me want to say yes. So I did. We met at the trailhead Saturday morning. He was taller than I expected, broad-shouldered, with that scruffy, just-got-out-of-bed look that felt intentional. His voice was deeper in person. "Glad you came," he said, flashing a smile. "Hope you're not afraid of a little incline." I wore the good leggings, I joked. "Bring it on." The trail started easy, dirt path, dappled sunlight, birdsong overhead. We talked about music, bad dates, favorite travel spots. He made me laugh. He walked just ahead, glancing back every so often to make sure I was keeping up. About 40 minutes in, the trail narrowed. Trees thickened, and cell signal dropped to one lonely bar. He turned to me. "Let's take the side path. There's a lookout maybe 10 minutes that way." There was no sign, just a barely visible break in the trees. My gut whispered something, but I ignored it. "Sure," I said, trying to sound casual. The path was steeper here. Roots reached out like fingers. We stopped once so I could catch my breath, and that's when he pulled out his phone and said, "Signal's trash here. You should probably put yours on airplane mode to save battery." I smiled, but my stomach flipped. "Nah, I like to keep it on. Just in case." He didn't push, just gave a half shrug and kept walking. But something shifted. His jokes got darker. He started asking questions that felt off. "Ever think about how easy it'd be to disappear up here?" I laughed nervously. Not really." He smiled. "You should. No one would hear a thing." I stopped walking. My pulse thudded in my ears. "Kevin, that's not funny." He turned back to me, face unreadable. "Relax. It's just a joke." I forced a laugh, but my body was on high alert now. I slipped my phone out of my pocket behind my back, just in case. "I think I'm good on the lookout," I said. "Let's head back." He didn't move. "You're not curious?" I stepped back. I'm more of a brunch girl than a true adventurer. Then he said, "You're not scared of me, are you?" I didn't answer. He stepped closer. "You're shaking." I took another step back and said, "My GPS shares my location with my sister. She gets an alert if I stop moving too long." His eyes narrowed. "Seriously?" "Yeah. She's kind of paranoid. But hey, better safe than sorry, right?" Silence. Then he smiled again. That same easy smile from the parking lot. "Okay, chill. I didn't mean to freak you out." He turned around and started walking back toward the main path. I waited a beat, then followed, slowly, keeping a good 10 feet between us, phone still in hand. We didn't talk much on the way down. When we reached the cars, I didn't wait for small talk. I waved, got in, and locked the doors. He stood there for a second, then walked to his own car with a shrug. I drove straight to a coffee shop, hands trembling, and sat in the parking lot until I stopped shaking. Then I blocked his number, deleted the app, told my roommate everything. I never heard from Kevin again. I booked the Airbnb because it was cheap, had good reviews, and was close to the conference center. The host, Greg, was a retired architect with over 85-star ratings. His listing described a private upstairs suite in a quiet neighborhood, exactly what I needed for my 3-night stay. When I arrived, he greeted me on the porch with a warm smile and a steaming mug of tea. "You must be Lydia," he said. "Long flight?" He showed me around the house, then led me upstairs to the guest room. It was clean, modest, with a big window and a handwritten welcome note on the pillow. The Wi-Fi password was printed and placed neatly on the nightstand. "If you need anything," he said, "I'm just downstairs." I locked the door behind him. Not because I was suspicious, just cautious. The room was quiet, and I fell asleep quickly. The next morning, I woke to the smell of toast. Greg was in the kitchen flipping pancakes. "Made extra," he said. "Can't present on an empty stomach." We ate and talked. He asked about my research, my goals, my hometown. He listened closely, nodding in that calm, thoughtful way that made it easy to open up. When I left for the conference, he handed me a small umbrella. "Forecast says rain." Each day, he'd leave something outside my door: banana bread, a quote on a note card, a cup of herbal tea. Always considerate, never intrusive. That's what I kept telling myself. On the third night, I came downstairs late for water and found him reading on the couch. "Can't sleep?" he asked. I shook my head. He offered me wine. We talked about loneliness, uncertainty, and life after school. Then he asked, "Do you feel safe traveling alone?" I said yes, though the question lingered. The next night, I got back late after dinner with colleagues. The porch light was off, and the door was unlocked. I crept upstairs, careful not to wake him, until I saw my door slightly ajar. I was certain I'd locked it. Inside, everything looked fine. My bag was untouched. My laptop still charging, but the welcome note that had been on my pillow was now on my desk. There was something new written on the back, in pencil. "You're more beautiful in person." I went downstairs and knocked on his door. No answer. I barely slept. I blocked the door with a chair and kept the light on all night. The next morning, Greg was in the kitchen like nothing had happened. "Sleep okay?" he asked. I stared at him. "Did you go into my room?" He looked genuinely surprised. "No, of course not. Maybe you left the door unlocked. I think I'm going to check out early." His smile tightened. "Is something wrong?" "Just a change of plans." He nodded slowly. "Whatever makes you comfortable." As I packed, I opened the closet, something I hadn't done yet. Inside was a camera on the top shelf. A DSLR. Lens cap off. Pointed toward the bed. The battery light blinked red. There was no memory card. I didn't confront him. I didn't ask questions. I left. At a nearby diner, I called the police. Then I filed a complaint with Airbnb. I submitted photos. Wrote a detailed report. A few days later, Airbnb confirmed Greg's account had been removed. They refunded my stay. Offered a voucher I never used. The police followed up once. I gave them everything. I never found out what happened to Greg. Whether he'd done it before. Whether he was ever charged. But I still think about that camera. How long it had been there. Where the memory card went. And how danger doesn't always arrive with a threat. Sometimes it shows up with pancakes and poetry. The first time I met David, I was looking for a copy of The Bell Jar. It was raining, and I ducked into this little independent bookstore on the corner of 8th and Willow, the kind of place that smelled like cedar and dust and carried more poetry than profit. I was halfway through the fiction aisle when I heard a voice behind me say, "Plath's upstairs. But if you're in that kind of mood, I'd recommend in Sexton instead." I turned, startled. He was tall, mid-30s maybe, with a navy cardigan and a mug in his hand that said "Books, People." His smile was warm, but not too eager. I laughed nervously and said, "That obvious, huh?" He gestured toward the stairs. "It's always the rain that brings out the Sylvia readers." I followed him up. He moved slowly, like he had all the time in the world, and I couldn't tell if he was flirting or just had that kind of personality. We found the book, chatted a bit about poetry, and then he asked, "Do you live nearby?" I told him I'd just moved into a place a few blocks away. He smiled. "Then I expect to see you here often. I'm David, by the way. Manager, part-time therapist, and full-time caffeine addict." I smiled back. "Emma." That was the beginning. It started innocently. I'd stop in once a week, sometimes just to browse, sometimes to escape the noise of my apartment. David always seemed to be there, behind the counter with his tea, rearranging shelves, or chatting with customers. He remembered my name, my favorite authors. He'd set aside books he thought I'd like. "You seem like someone who needs stories with sharp edges," he said once, handing me a copy of Carmen Maria Machado's short stories. "Not the soft, forgettable stuff." I liked the attention. I liked how he made me feel interesting. Seen. One day, he invited me to a poetry reading at the store. It's low-key. Wine. Folding chairs. No pressure. I said yes. It was small, 15 people max. He introduced the readers and poured drinks like a host at a dinner party. I sat in the back, sipping cheap red wine and feeling like I was part of something secret. Afterward, he sat with me on the stairs and asked what I thought. We talked for over an hour. "You should read sometime," he said. "You have that intensity." I laughed. "What kind of intensity?" "The kind people lean into." I didn't sleep much that night. Not because I was scared. Because I couldn't stop thinking. The next week, he asked if I wanted to grab lunch. "You've been upgraded from customer to friend," he said. "That comes with perks." We went to a little sandwich shop 2 blocks away. He paid. He asked questions. Listened closely. Tilted his head, like everything I said was fascinating. He told me about his past, sort of. Said he used to teach but left after an incident with a student who didn't understand boundaries. He didn't elaborate. I didn't push. I should have. Over the next month, the visits became more frequent. I'd stop in after work, and somehow we'd end up talking until close. He started texting me, recommendations, jokes, questions. Always thoughtful. Always just the right amount of attention. Then one night, I came in and he locked the door behind me. "We're closing early," he said. "Just too tired today." I froze for a second, then nodded. "Okay." We sat on the floor between the shelves, drinking tea and talking about loneliness. He told me he didn't really date, that most people weren't worth the effort. "You're different though," he said, looking at me over the rim of his mug. I looked away. "I'm not sure what that means." He smiled. "It just means I notice things." I left soon after, heart pounding. I told myself it was harmless, that maybe he was just intense, eccentric, a little lonely like me. That weekend, he showed up outside my apartment. "I was in the neighborhood," he said, holding a small paper bag. "Thought you might like this." Inside was a copy of a book we'd talked about once, weeks ago, and a small jar of lavender tea. I didn't know how he learned where I lived. I asked casually, "Did I ever give you my address?" He shrugged. "Must have come up." It hadn't. I started pulling back, visiting less, answering texts with delays, saying I was busy with work. That's when the tone shifted. He started sending cryptic messages, quotes from books about betrayal, about people who don't appreciate connection, about how some people aren't ready for honesty. Then one morning, I found a book on my doorstep. No note, just a copy of The Collector by John Fowles. If you haven't read it, it's about a man who kidnaps a woman and keeps her in his basement, convinced that if she just understood him, she'd love him. I didn't return to the bookstore. I blocked his number, changed my route home, told my landlord to be on alert. I didn't call the police. I didn't think I had enough to report. Nothing had happened, except that everything had. 3 weeks later, the bookstore was closed. Permanently. Windows papered over. No forwarding address. No explanation. I never saw David again. I never thought I'd fall for something like this. I tell myself that a lot. I wasn't naive. I wasn't desperate. I wasn't even looking for anything serious. Just someone to talk to. Someone who didn't know me from school or care about what team I was on or who I sat with at lunch. So when I got a follow request from a girl named Christina on Instagram, I didn't think twice. She looked real, normal, cute, but not fake. Her profile had a few selfies, a picture of a dog, some beach shots, and a short bio. 20 Cali girl waterwave DM me, I don't bite 2 hearts. I was 17 at the time. She said she was 20. That should have set off alarms. But it didn't. Not then. She messaged me first. "Hey, you're kinda cute." Smirking face. I replied with a smiley face and thanked her. She asked if I was in college. I told her I was still in high school. She didn't blink. Just said, "That's fine. I like younger guys sometimes." We kept talking. Her messages were flirty, but not crude. She asked about my hobbies, what kind of music I liked, whether I had a girlfriend. I told her no. The conversation moved fast. Within an hour, she asked if I had Snapchat. I gave her my username. That's where things got serious. She sent a selfie, mirror shot, tank top, toned stomach. It wasn't over the top, but it definitely wasn't something I was used to getting. I told her she looked amazing. Then she asked me to send one back. "Something fun," she added. I hesitated, but I didn't want to seem boring, or nervous, or like some little kid who didn't know how to talk to girls. So I sent a shirtless mirror pic. Something safe, I thought. She replied, "Damn, you're cute. Want to trade for real?" My heart pounded. I knew what she meant. I wasn't dumb, but I also wasn't thinking clearly. Hormones, ego, curiosity, it all hit at once. I asked, "You first?" She sent a snap. It was blurry, dark, but clearly revealing. I could barely believe it. She said, "Your turn." I don't even remember thinking. I just remember doing it. Sending something I shouldn't have. 10 seconds later, the chat screen disappeared. I waited for a reply. Nothing. Then came the message. Not on Snapchat. On Instagram. It wasn't from Christina. It was from an account with no profile picture. Send $500 via PayPal in the next 2 hours, or this goes to everyone you follow. I stared at my phone, my heart racing. I thought it was a joke. A scam. Some kind of prank. Then I got another message. This time with a screenshot. It was my photo. The one I'd sent. And below it was a list, my followers on Instagram. My full name. My school. My parents' names. "Don't play games," the message read. "We do this all the time. Pay or get exposed." I froze. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. My hands were shaking so badly I dropped my phone. I picked it up and typed, "I'm a minor. You can't do this." The reply came instantly. "That's your problem, not ours. Pay up or get wrecked." I didn't have $500. I didn't even have $50. I was just a high school kid with a part-time job at a pizza place. I begged. I offered $20. I said I'd get the rest later. They replied, "Clock's ticking." I didn't know what to do. I felt sick, trapped, humiliated. I imagined my classmates seeing it, my teammates, my little brother, my dad. That's when I made the hardest decision I've ever made. I told my father. He was in the kitchen washing dishes. I walked in, pale and shaking, and said, "Dad, I need to tell you something really bad." He turned off the water and looked at me. "You're not in trouble for telling the truth," he said. "Whatever it is, we'll deal with it." I told him everything. Every message. Every photo. Every detail. He didn't yell. He didn't panic. He just nodded and said, "Okay, we're gonna fix this. But first, we report it." We took screenshots. Logged everything. He called the local police department and filed a report. Then, he contacted Instagram and PayPal to document the scam attempt. The officer we spoke to said it was happening more and more. That these groups, usually operating overseas, target teenagers pretending to be girls, luring them into sexting, then extorting them. They're professionals, he said. They have scripts, timers, backup accounts. They don't care how old you are. I asked what would happen if I didn't pay. They might send it, he said. But most of the time they don't. They just move on to the next victim. I deleted every account, changed my phone number, shut down Snapchat, went completely offline for 2 weeks. They never sent anything. Or if they did, no one ever told me. I went back to school expecting whispers, stares, something. But nothing happened. Life moved on. But I didn't forget. I still haven't. That experience changed how I view the internet, how I view trust. I don't talk to strangers online anymore. I don't flirt for fun. I don't send anything I wouldn't want printed out and taped to the school bulletin board. Some nights, I still think about that one message. Your turn. And how one decision, 1 second, almost destroyed everything. I got lucky. A lot of people don't. And if you're reading this, if you think it won't happen to you, just know this. It doesn't start with blackmail. It starts with a compliment, then a photo, then a choice you can't take back. My first real online friend was a guy named John. We met on Discord during my sophomore year, in the middle of a chaotic Call of Duty match where it seemed like everyone was either yelling or dying in the dumbest ways possible. Except him. He had a calm voice and sharp instincts. He wasn't barking orders or throwing tantrums, he just played smart. I had a mic, he had a mic, and we ended up laughing after we wiped the other team in a surprise comeback. Then he sent me a friend request. I accepted without thinking much of it. At first, it stayed in the realm of gaming. We'd hop on after school, run duos, or join random squads. He was good, fast, strategic, and funny in a dry, sarcastic way that made me laugh harder than I should have at 11 p.m. on a school night. He'd send me memes, playlists, TikToks featuring glitchy game footage. It felt like a normal friendship, one of those digital ones that grow naturally when two people just click. He told me he was 17, a junior like me. Said he lived in Oregon and had been homeschooled for a while because of family stuff, though he didn't offer specifics. I didn't press it. I figured we all had our things. We started talking outside of games, messaging during the day, joking about teachers, homework, annoying classmates. He was easy to talk to, and when you're a teenage girl in a small town where you've known the same group of people since kindergarten, someone new can feel electric. He started using nicknames for me. Nothing creepy, just partner, teammate, champ. I did the same. It became a thing, like our own little joke. Then he started asking questions. At first, they were harmless. What's your favorite band? How do you take your coffee? Have you ever been in love? Then they got more personal. Do you ever feel invisible at school? Do you wish you could erase everything and start over? I told him sometimes, yeah. I think every teenager has those days. He said he felt like that all the time. He told me he didn't really have friends, that people thought he was too much or weird. I tried to be supportive. I sent encouraging messages, funny gifs, little things to cheer him up. That's when the messages started getting heavier. He'd say things like, "You're the only one who really sees me," or, "If I didn't have you, I'd probably stop trying." I didn't know how to respond. I was flattered and scared at the same time. A part of me felt responsible, like if I didn't respond, something bad might happen. Another part of me felt trapped. Then came the first drawing. He sent it in a message late one night. It was a pencil sketch, shaded, detailed, kind of haunting. It showed two people standing back to back, holding weapons, surrounded by shadows. I realized one of them looked like me. The other looked like him, at least based on the photos he'd sent. "I drew us," he wrote, "fighting through the world together." I stared at it for a long time. I didn't know what to say. I finally replied, "You're really talented." He sent a smiley face and said, "I've drawn you before. I just didn't show you." That sentence sat in my stomach like a stone. After that, he got more intense. He'd message me constantly, even during school hours. If I didn't respond right away, he'd follow up with a string of question marks. Then, "Are you mad at me? Or did I do something wrong?" I tried to set boundaries. I told him I couldn't always be on my phone. That I had classes, homework, a life outside of Discord. He said, "I just miss you when you're gone." Then he started getting possessive. One day, I mentioned a guy in my chemistry class who made me laugh. John didn't respond for a few minutes. Then he wrote, "I don't like when you talk about other guys like that." I replied, "He's just a classmate." "It's not like that," he said, still. "You don't need anyone else." I started pulling back after that. Not ghosting, just being less available. Shorter replies. Delayed responses. I figured he'd get the hint. Instead, he doubled down. He sent me a playlist titled "For Us." The thumbnail was that same drawing of us back to back, only now the shadows had faces. They looked like my classmates, my friends, my teachers. I stopped listening after the second track. Then he started talking about visiting. "I want to meet you," he said. "Face to face. No more screens." I told him no, that I wasn't comfortable with that. He said, "Why not? Don't you trust me?" I told him it wasn't about trust, that I just wasn't ready. He didn't reply for hours. When he finally did, it was one sentence. "If you won't let me in, maybe I'll find my own way." I felt cold all over. The next morning, I found a printed copy of the sketch taped to my locker. No note, no explanation, just the drawing. I looked around, trying to convince myself it was a coincidence, that maybe someone else drew it, but I knew better. I skipped lunch and went straight to the school counselor. I told her everything, from the first game to the messages to the locker note. She listened carefully, her expression shifting from polite interest to concern. "Do you know his real name?" she asked. "Just John." I gave her the Discord handle, the email, the screenshots. She called in the vice principal, then the school IT guy. Within an hour, they had pulled up more than I thought possible. John wasn't 17. He was 22. His name wasn't even John. He lived in a neighboring state and had a history of being banned from online platforms for harassment. He'd been kicked off multiple Discord servers for inappropriate behavior toward younger users. That night, my parents had a long talk with the police. They traced the IP address, opened an investigation. I was told not to contact him again, not to respond if he messaged me. Just document everything and report it. I changed my usernames, deleted old accounts, switched to private profiles. But for weeks, I felt like he was still watching. Then one day, I logged into a new Discord account, just to reconnect with a few safe friends, and I got a message request. The username was different, but the art style and the profile picture was unmistakable. It was a new drawing. Just me this time, standing alone. Above it, 2 words, "Remember me?" I blocked the account immediately. I filed another report. Eventually, the messages stopped. But I never forgot how easy it had been for someone to slip into my life, to make me feel seen, needed, responsible, to blur the line between friendship and fear. People think online danger looks like a red flag waving in your face. But sometimes it looks like a teammate, a playlist, a sketch. After my wife passed away, I promised myself I'd never try online dating. It felt tacky, forced, like trying to recreate something that used to come naturally. But after 2 years of silence in a house meant for 2, I caved. It was my daughter who finally convinced me. She said, "Dad, you don't have to get married again. Just talk to someone. You deserve company." So I made a profile on eHarmony. My bio was simple. Widower, 52, likes classic literature, old records, strong coffee, and walking my dog Henry. I uploaded a few recent photos, nothing flashy. Just me in my backyard, one with Henry, one at my brother's birthday barbecue. I didn't expect much, but about a week in, I got a message from someone named Valerie. She was stunning, light brown hair, soft smile, eyes that felt warm even through a screen. She said she was 49, lived about an hour away, and worked as a freelance interior designer. Her message was short but thoughtful. I really like your dog. And your smile. You look kind. I stared at it for a while before replying. Something about her felt sincere. We started exchanging messages daily, then chatting on the phone. Her voice was low, calm, almost melodic. She told me she'd been divorced for 6 years, no kids, and was just looking for someone with emotional maturity. I told her about my wife, how I still talked to her sometimes when the house was quiet. Valerie didn't flinch. She said, "That just means you loved her deeply." That's beautiful. I fell fast. She never pressured me physically. Never asked for anything. We mostly talked about books, travel, and our childhoods. She said she grew up in upstate New York, but had moved west after college. Said California felt more like home. After about a month, she suggested we meet in person. She picked a bar halfway between us, quiet, older crowd, live jazz on weekends. She said she liked that it wasn't trendy. Let's just have a drink. No pressure, she wrote. I agreed. I even ironed a shirt for the first time in months. The bar was tucked between a florist and a cigar shop, with a dark wood exterior and a neon sign that buzzed faintly. I arrived early, heart pounding, palms sweaty. I sat at the bar and ordered a whiskey neat, just to give myself something to hold. 10 minutes passed. Then 20. I checked my phone. No messages. I looked around the room, scanning faces. Couples, a few older men in suits, a woman reading at the end of the bar. No one who looked like Valerie's photos. After 30 minutes, I finally texted her. Hey, I'm here. Just checking you're okay. No response. I waited another 10, then got up to leave. I was halfway to the door when the bartender called out. Excuse me, sir? I turned. He was drying a glass, looking cautious. Are you waiting for someone named Valerie? My stomach dropped. Yeah, why? He exchanged a look with the bar manager, who came over. We've seen this happen a few times, the manager said quietly. A guy comes in looking for a woman named Valerie. Shows us a picture. It's always the same photo. He pulled out his phone and opened a saved image. It was her. Same hair, same smile. That's her, I said. Do you know her? The manager sighed. It's not her real name. The photo's taken from a real woman's Instagram. But the person behind it is a man named Marcus. He's been targeting older men through dating sites. Sometimes he shows up in person. Most of the time, he doesn't. My mouth went dry. Has anyone reported him? I asked. Multiple times. But he keeps changing his phone number, emails, platform accounts. It's hard to pin down. Why this bar? We think he likes to watch. Sometimes he sits at the back, sees who shows up, figures out what kind of men fall for it. The bartender added, We've tried to catch him. But he's slippery. I sat back down, stunned. The manager leaned in. If you're willing to help us, I can call someone. I nodded. He stepped into the back office and returned a few minutes later with 2 plainclothes officers. They asked me to walk them through the messages, the phone calls, everything. I handed over screenshots, the phone number, the app profile, and every email I'd received. One of the officers said, We've been looking for this guy. You're not the only one. Then the bartender pointed discreetly toward the back corner of the bar. A man had just walked in, mid-40s, average build, wearing a blue windbreaker and baseball cap. He ordered a drink and sat alone, facing the room, eyes scanning slowly. That's him, the bartender whispered. The officers moved fast but casually. They didn't make a scene. One approached the man from behind, while the other went to the opposite side. They asked him to step outside. He protested. Asked why. One of the officers flashed a badge. I watched from the window as they handcuffed him beside a black SUV. Marcus. I don't know what I expected. Maybe someone with a scar. A visible sign of malice. But he looked ordinary, like someone you'd see buying milk. They found multiple phones in his backpack. Dozens of photos. A printed list of names and phone numbers, mine included. He'd been running the same scam for years. Sometimes he asked for money after building trust. Sometimes he used romantic leverage to get people to reveal personal information. In rare cases, he showed up at their homes. I was lucky. I didn't give him a dime. Didn't tell him where I lived. But I had been vulnerable. Open. I'd told him things I hadn't said out loud in years. That night, I drove home in silence. Henry met me at the door, tail wagging. I I sat on the couch and stared at my phone. There were still messages from Valerie in the inbox. I read them one last time before deleting everything. The next morning, the officer called to thank me. Said Marcus had been charged with multiple counts of fraud and impersonation. I asked how many people he'd done this to. At least 30 that we know of, he said. Probably more. I haven't been on a dating app since then. I've always been a sucker for abandoned places, their stillness, the way they hold on to echoes. When I was a kid, I'd sneak into old barns or shuttered stores with my camera, trying to capture what time left behind. So when I matched with a guy named Tyler, and he mentioned he was into urban exploration, I felt an instant click. He stood out from the usual, "What's your favorite pizza topping?" crowd. His messages were thoughtful, curious. He asked about the places I'd explored, the kind of camera I used, how I felt when I stepped into buildings no one had touched in decades. I told him it felt like stepping into a memory that didn't belong to anyone anymore. He said that was exactly it. After a few days of chatting, he suggested we explore an old textile factory on the outskirts of town. Said he knew a way and that didn't involve fences or trespassing tickets. I hesitated at first. It was a little unconventional for a first date, but I'd done riskier things with friends, and he seemed genuine. We agreed to meet on a Sunday morning. The factory sat at the edge of a long-dead industrial zone. 5 stories of broken windows and rusting pipes, quiet except for the occasional drone of a passing train. I parked my car on a cracked lot across the street and spotted Tyler leaning against a rust-colored SUV. He looked just like his profile, tall, lean, messy dark hair, camera bag slung across his chest. He smiled when he saw me and waved. "Glad you made it," he said. "I brought snacks. And water." That earned him a point in my book. We chatted for a bit, small talk, nothing intense, and then he led me to a side entrance, partially hidden behind an overgrown chain-link fence. The gate had been peeled back, barely noticeable unless you were looking for it. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the faint scent of mildew. Our footsteps echoed on the cracked concrete. Shards of glass caught the light like sugar crystals. I took out my camera and started shooting, rusted machinery, faded safety posters, a row of lockers with names still taped to the fronts. Tyler mostly hung back, watching me work. He'd point out interesting details, graffiti tags, abandoned tools, a half-collapsed staircase. He seemed to know the layout well, like he'd been there before. I asked him how often he explored places like this. "Couple times a month," he said. "Helps me think." After an hour or so, I started to feel comfortable, maybe even impressed. He wasn't pushy. He didn't talk too much. He respected my space. Then we found the basement stairs. "Want to see something cool?" he asked. I hesitated. The stairs were steep, narrow, and mostly in shadow. I flicked on my flashlight and aimed it down. The air that drifted up was cooler, damper. "What's down there?" "Old dye vats, I think. And a boiler room. It's creepy but really photogenic." I nodded slowly. "Only if you're comfortable," he added. I followed him down. The basement smelled like wet stone and rusted metal. Our lights swept over thick pipes, peeling walls, and coils of forgotten wiring. It was quieter down there, so quiet that I could hear the crunch of dirt under my boots and the soft hum of my own breath. We wandered for a bit, taking photos. I paused to shoot a row of broken gauges when I noticed he was watching me again. "You always go exploring alone?" he asked. "Sometimes, but usually with friends. Ever get scared?" I shrugged. "I've been startled, but not scared." "Not really." He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "You should be," he said softly. I forced a laugh. "Why's that?" "Places like this, people disappear in places like this. No one notices for a while." I let my camera drop against my chest, suddenly hyper-aware of how far we'd come from the entrance. I hadn't seen another soul since we arrived. No cars outside. No signs of recent visitors. "Is that a fact?" I said, trying to keep my tone light. He tilted his head. "Just saying. It's easy to lose track of things down here. Time. Direction." I glanced at my phone. No signal. I told myself not to panic. "Not yet." "Okay, I think I've got enough shots," I said. "Want to head back up?" He didn't move right away. Just stared at me for a moment too long. Then he smiled again. "Sure." We doubled back through the hallway, but something felt different. The path we took coming in didn't look the same. I turned left where I thought we'd come from, but the corridor dead-ended in a collapsed wall. Didn't we come from this way?" "Nope," Tyler said. "You're turned around." He took the lead again, but now his pace slowed. He stopped often, pointing out things that didn't matter: old pipes, water stains, a broken wheelbarrow. I felt like he was buying time. My chest tightened. "Tyler?" I said, stopping. He turned. "I think I'm ready to go. Now." He stared at me for a long beat, then nodded. "Okay." We walked in silence for a few more minutes. I kept checking over my shoulder, half expecting him to stop again. He didn't. Then we heard voices. Distant, echoing, but unmistakable. "Did you hear that?" I asked. He didn't answer. I turned a corner and saw light filtering in from a rooftop hole. Below it, a group of 5 or 6 people were standing in a circle, setting up tripods and cameras. College students, maybe. One of them looked up and waved. "Hey!" Thought we were the only ones here. I waved back, my body flooding with relief. Tyler's face changed. His mouth tightened. His posture stiffened. "You know them?" he asked. "No," I said, "but I'm going to stick with them for a bit." "Why?" I stared at him. "Because I want to." He didn't answer. I walked toward the group. The girl who waved stepped forward with a curious smile. "Are you guys shooting too?" "Yeah," I said quickly. "Mind if I tag along?" "Sure. We're doing a project for our photography class." I turned to say something to Tyler, but he was already gone. Just gone. I scanned the dark hallway behind me. Nothing. I stayed with the students for another half hour, pretending to be interested in their project. I didn't tell them what happened. I just stayed close, followed them out, and didn't look back. When I reached the parking lot, his SUV was gone. That night, I blocked his number. 3 days later, I got a message from an unknown email. "That place was special. I thought you'd understand." I didn't reply. I changed my social media settings, made my accounts private, switched my phone number a week later. I never went urban exploring again. We met through a friend of a friend. Not online, not in a bar. Just one of those casual connections made over drinks at someone's game night. He was visiting from out of state, Idaho, I think, staying with a cousin for a few weeks while figuring out his next move. He said he was in between jobs and considering relocating to Southern California. I didn't ask why he left his last job. I should have. He was quiet that first night, but observant. You could feel him watching the room without making it obvious. He didn't say much, but when he did, it was sharp, funny even. I remember thinking he seemed mature, thoughtful, a little awkward in a way that made him seem safe. We started texting after that. No pressure, all casual. He'd ask for restaurant recommendations or send photos of the beach at sunset. After a few days, he asked if I wanted to grab coffee. I agreed. The first time we met up, he was already sitting at the corner table, sipping something plain and black. I ordered a latte and sat across from him. Conversation was easy. He had this way of asking questions that made you feel interesting even when you were rambling about your job or your favorite childhood cereal. We ended up walking a few blocks after that, just talking. He mentioned that he was thinking of extending his visit and maybe checking out apartments. I said, "Well, you picked a terrible rental market." He laughed. We met up a few more times, a hike, a bookstore, dinner at a taco truck lot. Nothing romantic happened. He didn't try to kiss me, didn't even hug me goodbye. He said he didn't want to be another guy who moves too fast. I appreciated that. Then he asked if he could cook for me. "I make a killer stir-fry," he said. "Cleanup included." I hesitated. I don't usually invite people I barely know into my apartment, but something about him felt careful, like he was trying to prove himself trustworthy. So I said yes. He showed up a little early that Thursday evening, holding a grocery bag and a 6-pack. He had taken a rideshare, which I thought was considerate, though now I wonder if it was something else. He was polite, took off his shoes at the door, complimented my tiny kitchen, asked if I wanted music on while he cooked. He chopped vegetables with surgical precision, barely made a mess, and cleaned as he went. We ate at my little dining table, and he told stories about growing up in a small town, how he used to sneak out to fish at night just for the quiet. After dinner, we talked for a while and watched half an episode of a crime documentary. When it started getting late, I stood up and said I had work early. He didn't move right away. "You're kicking me out?" he asked with a small smile. "I'm kicking everyone out, even myself. I'm going to bed," I joked. He stood slowly. "Fair enough. Thanks for dinner." I walked him to the door. He paused before stepping out. "This was nice," he said. "Felt normal." "It was," I replied, and meant it. He didn't text me that night. Or the next day. I figured we'd just drifted like people do. I didn't think much of it until 2 days later when I opened my kitchen cabinet to grab a mug and saw something strange. Aluminum foil, lining the shelf. At first, I thought maybe I'd done it and forgotten, but I never line my cabinets. It's something my grandmother used to do in the 90s. It didn't make sense. Then I opened the drawer under the sink. Foil. Across the bottom. Tucked around the edges. My heart rate picked up. I opened another cabinet. Then another. Every surface lined. The inside of the fridge? Foil. Microwave interior? Foil. The toaster oven, the utensil drawer, the spice rack. Even the goddamn fruit bowl. I backed out of the kitchen like it had grown teeth. At first, I thought maybe it was a prank. Maybe Ryan had done it as some kind of weird joke. But nothing about it said funny. It wasn't messy or rushed. The foil was smooth, pressed carefully into every corner. It looked intentional, like someone had taken their time, like they wanted me to find it, but not right away. I called my best friend, Kara. She thought I was exaggerating. Maybe he's just quirky? Did he think it was helpful? Helpful? I said. It's foil. It's everywhere. Who lines the inside of a salt shaker lid? Wait, the salt shaker? Yes. Okay. That's messed up. I didn't sleep much that night. The next morning, I sent Ryan a message. Hey, not sure if you noticed, but my kitchen is covered in aluminum foil. No reply. I waited a few hours. Nothing. I called. Straight to voicemail. I texted again. Did you do this? Why? Still nothing. I opened our chat history and scrolled through it, looking for any hint of something I missed. There wasn't much. Just questions. Lots of them. About where I kept things. What kind of cleaning supplies I used. Whether I liked organizing or chaotic kitchens. At the time, I thought he was just making conversation. The next day, I called the friend who introduced us. She was surprised I'd even seen him again. He's kind of intense, she admitted. He stayed with my cousin for 2 weeks and rearranged all the furniture. Said it had better flow. Did he ever mention foil? She laughed. No, but he did wrap their remote in plastic wrap and said he didn't like fingerprints. I hung up and sat on the kitchen floor staring at the foil-lined cabinets. There was no damage. Nothing stolen. Just wrapped. I debated calling the police, but what would I say? A guy I had dinner with redecorated my kitchen with aluminum foil. They'd laugh me out of the station. Instead, I spent the next 3 hours peeling it all off. I filled an entire garbage bag with it. My hands smelled like metal and cleaning spray. I scrubbed everything twice. Then I changed the locks. Just in case. I never heard from Ryan again. Not a text. Not a call. Nothing. I checked his Instagram a few times, but the account had been deleted. I even tried to find him on Facebook, but he was gone there too. Like he'd never existed. A week later, I found a piece of foil under my bed, folded into a neat triangle. I don't know how it got there. I hadn't even taken him into my room. At least, I didn't think I had. That's when I started wondering if maybe I'd fallen asleep while he was still in the apartment that night. If maybe I'd nodded off during the documentary, and he'd stayed longer than I remembered. I'll never know. I replaced the locks again. Bought a camera for the hallway. Started double-checking the windows before bed. I told myself he was just weird. Maybe obsessive. Maybe trying to make a point. But the truth is, I don't know what he wanted. Control? Fear? Proof that he could leave a mark without ever touching me? Whatever it was, it worked. Months later, I still find myself checking the corners of cabinets. Still hesitate before inviting someone over. And I haven't bought a single roll of foil since. I wasn't looking for anything serious when I met Elena. I'd just gotten into the habit of swiping in the evenings after work, half boredom, half curiosity. We matched, exchanged a few messages, and before long, our conversations moved past small talk. She was quick with a joke, asked questions that didn't feel robotic, and had a kind of energy that pulled me in. For our first date, we met at a small amusement park just outside the city. She wore a hoodie with a faded band logo, and had this backpack covered in pins and patches. We rode the Ferris wheel, shared a funnel cake, and talked about everything from awful horror movies to how she broke her wrist skateboarding last year. It felt easy, natural. I left that night thinking about her smile. That night, she sent me a picture of her cat curled up in a laundry basket. I replied with a dumb meme. It became a pattern, texts before bed, jokes throughout the day, little check-ins like we'd known each other longer than a few days. For our second date, She suggested dinner at an Italian spot downtown. It was a little more upscale than I expected, but I didn't question it. We met outside just after sunset. The sidewalk was still warm from the day, and the windows glowed yellow with hanging lights. Everything was going fine until we walked inside. I saw my ex, Mallory, bussing a table near the front. She looked up, saw me, and froze. I did the same. Elena noticed immediately. Her eyes followed mine, then narrowed. I tried to play it off, but when Mallory came over to drop off menus, it was too late. "This a joke?" Elena asked as soon as Mallory walked away. Her voice was low but sharp. "You bring me here to make a point or something?" "No," I said, hands raised. I didn't know she worked here, but she was already grabbing her bag and heading out the door. I followed her onto the sidewalk, trying to explain. She walked fast, didn't look back, and by the time I caught up, she'd already unlocked her car. "I don't deal with games," she said before slamming the door and driving off. I figured that was it. I sent her a couple texts. No response. I let it go. Then 10 days later, in the middle of a work meeting, I got a message from her. "Hey, can we talk?" I stared at my screen for a long time before replying. She said she was sorry for overreacting, that her last relationship had ended badly, and she assumed the worst. She wanted to start over. Make it up to me. She offered to cook dinner at her place that Friday. I said yes. She asked what kind of food I liked, if I had any allergies. I told her seafood lasagna was a favorite, something I hadn't had in years. Then I mentioned my nut allergy. I made it clear, like hospital-level serious. Not just I get itchy, but call an ambulance immediately serious. I told her I carried an EpiPen, that even trace amounts could set me off. She replied with a worried face emoji. "Don't worry," she wrote. "I'll be really careful. I promise." Later that night, she followed up with more questions. Which nuts were the worst? Did I have a reaction time? What was it like when it happened? I answered everything. It felt a little intense, but I figured she just wanted to be cautious. That Friday, I pulled up to her apartment just after 7. She lived in one of those older brick buildings with creaky stairs and a green door that stuck when you pushed it. I brought a bottle of wine and knocked. She answered in jeans and an apron, her hair up in a messy bun. The smell hit me immediately, garlic, butter, something rich and warm. She grinned. Perfect timing. I was just pulling it out. Inside, everything was tidy. Small table with cloth napkins, candles burning low, soft music playing from a speaker in the corner. I handed her the wine. She poured us each a glass. Dinner was incredible. The lasagna was layered with shrimp and scallops, the sauce creamy and peppered with fresh herbs. She told me the secret was lemon zest and a little white wine. I was impressed. Said it was one of the best meals I'd had in years. She smiled. "I told you I'd make it up to you." After we finished, she cleared the plates and brought out dessert, a homemade tiramisu, neatly cut into squares and dusted with cocoa powder. I hesitated. "This doesn't have nuts, right?" I asked. She looked almost amused. "No, just mascarpone, espresso, ladyfingers." I double-checked every ingredient. I relaxed a little and took a bite. It was incredible, cold, slightly bitter from the coffee, creamy and smooth. I had 2 more bites, maybe 3. We moved to the couch and kept talking. She asked about my job, my favorite travel spots, what I wanted to do in the next 5 years. Then I felt it, a tingling in my lips. Not the spicy food kind, more like static. Then my throat started to itch. That deep, inside your neck, kind of itch you can't scratch. I sat up straighter. "I think I'm having a reaction," I said. She blinked. "What?" "My throat," I said. "It's starting." I reached for my bag, fumbling for the EpiPen. My hands were shaking. I dropped it, cursed, picked it back up, and jabbed it into my thigh. My breath came in shorter gasps. "Call 911, I said. She didn't move. "Elena," I snapped. "I'm calling," she said, but she didn't pick up her phone. She just sat there, eyes fixed on me, calm as ever. I couldn't wait. I stumbled into the hallway and pulled out my phone, punching in the numbers myself. I could barely speak to the dispatcher, but they understood enough. Help was on the way. I collapsed near the front door, gasping, heart pounding. My vision blurred around the edges. I could still see Elena in the doorway, watching, arms crossed. No panic. No concern. The EMTs arrived fast. Oxygen mask. 4. Someone pressing on my chest asking if I could hear them. Everything faded. When I woke up, I was in a hospital bed, machines beeping softly. A nurse hovered nearby. She told me the EpiPen, and the quick call saved my life. I checked my phone. One new message. From Elena. I hope you're okay. I guess now I know you weren't lying about your allergy. Want to do something this weekend? I read it 3 times. Then I replied, did you put nuts in the tiramisu? Her response came quickly. Yeah, just a little. Crushed almonds in the base. I needed to know you weren't faking it. My last boyfriend lied about an allergy. I don't trust easily. I felt sick. I called her. She didn't answer. I sent one last message. You could have killed me. She replied, you handled it. You knew what to do. I just needed to be sure you were telling the truth. I wanted to know I could trust you. It was like she didn't understand, or didn't care, that she'd gambled with my life. I blocked her number and went straight to the police. I showed them the texts. Told them everything, what she cooked, what she said, how she stood there and watched while I fought to breathe. They took my statement, asked for screenshots, wrote down her name and address. They said it was serious. But without physical evidence, the dessert, a recording, it might be hard to prove intent. Still, they filed a report. I left the hospital shaken, exhausted, angry. I told a few close friends. They were horrified. One said, she tested you like you were some science experiment. Another said, you're lucky to be alive. I knew they were right. After that, I deleted every dating app. I stopped telling people about my allergy unless I had to. I always carry 2 EpiPens now, one in my bag, one in my jacket. And I never eat homemade food unless I've seen the ingredients with my own eyes. When I was 18, I landed a summer job at a fast food joint on the edge of a nearly abandoned strip mall in a small Northern California town. The place had sun-faded signs, cracked vinyl booths, and a lingering smell of fryer oil no amount of mopping could fix. I mostly worked the evening to close shift, flipping burgers, cleaning out the shake machine, and sweeping up fries from under the counters. That's where I met Liam. He was 20, a couple years older than me, with a buzzed haircut and a habit of keeping his shirt tucked in even after 8 hours on the grill line. Everyone said he used to go to college down in San Jose, but got suspended, something about grades and a cheating scandal. He told people it was all a misunderstanding, but nobody really pressed for details. Liam was the kind of guy who offered to cover your shift without hesitation. He laughed at all the manager's bad jokes. He was efficient, polite, and oddly invested in the place. When we closed, he stayed behind to help mop even when he wasn't scheduled for cleanup. I didn't think much about it at the time. Some people just like to stay busy. Since I didn't have a car, I usually took the bus home, which meant waiting alone in the dark for up to 40 minutes if I missed the last one. Liam overheard me talking about it one night and offered me a ride. I live 5 minutes from here, he said. Don't sit out there by yourself. It made sense. He seemed nice. I accepted. The first ride was normal. We talked about music and college plans. After that, it became a regular thing. He'd wait for me after closing and drive me home. I figured he was just being kind. We started having coffee together during breaks, sometimes in the back room, sometimes from the drive-thru down the block. He asked questions, but not in a weird way. Just things like, what do you want to study? Do you have siblings? What's your dream job? I thought he was just curious. Friendly. Looking back, I should have noticed how often he lingered after his shifts, even when he wasn't scheduled. Sometimes he'd clock out and sit in the parking lot for an hour, headlights off, music low. Just waiting. He started showing up at the end of my shift, even on nights he wasn't working. He'd wave through the window or wait by the dumpster like he just happened to be around. When I asked if he needed something, he'd say, just wanted to make sure you got home okay. Other coworkers liked him. One of the older kitchen staff said Liam probably missed having friends from school. He didn't seem to hang out with anyone outside of work, and in a town like ours, there wasn't much to do unless you liked fishing or drinking in someone's garage. He never asked me out, which I appreciated. I assumed he understood we were just friends. If he bought me coffee, he'd joke that I owed him next time. I always paid him back. Then he started asking about my schedule, what days I worked, if I ever swapped shifts. I kept my answers vague. It didn't feel like a big deal, but something in my gut started to shift. One night, I went out back to take out the trash and found him standing near the door. It was nearly midnight. He'd finished his shift 2 hours earlier. He said his ride bailed, that he just happened to be nearby. Then he offered to drive me home again. I didn't want to be rude. I said yes. Nothing happened. He dropped me off like always. But this time, he didn't drive away immediately. I watched from my bedroom as his car idled at the end of the block for another minute, before slowly pulling away. That night, I closed my curtains completely for the first time since I'd moved into that room. By the end of August, the air started to cool. People at work talked about heading back to school or looking for new jobs. Our manager organized a goodbye party, just pizza and cake at the park. Kayla, one of my co-workers, offered to drive me. Everyone came, including Liam. He kept his distance at first, sitting with a couple of the kitchen guys. But after most people left, he came over and asked if we could talk. I thought maybe he wanted to swap shifts or something. Instead, he asked me to go see a movie with him that weekend. Just us, he said. Like a real date. I paused, told him gently that I appreciated everything he'd done, especially the rides, but I didn't date co-workers. I explained I wanted to keep things simple, not let anything get weird. He nodded. No worries, he said. Totally understand. But for a second, his face changed. His jaw tightened, like he was clenching something inside. Then it was gone. He barely spoke to me the rest of the evening. Later that night, Kayla sent me a message. Just a short text. You need to see this. Attached were photos. At first, I thought they were from the party. But then I looked closer. The background was my bedroom. Different nights. Different clothes. Sometimes I was reading. Other times brushing my hair or getting ready for bed. All taken from outside my window. Kayla said Liam had been showing them around at work. Bragging about his collection. Telling people he'd been watching me for weeks. My hands went numb. I blocked his number. Closed every blind in the house. Checked the locks twice, then again. At around 3 a.m., I woke to the sound of glass breaking. For a second, I thought I was dreaming. Then I heard it again, closer. I stepped into my room and saw a figure at the window. A fist smashed through the glass. A hand reached inside, fumbling for the latch. I could see blood trailing down his wrist. I froze. Then I saw the metal glint of a knife in his other hand. I ran. Barefoot, no phone, just sprinted down the hall yelling for my parents. My mom came out of her room, confused. Then she saw my face. My dad grabbed the old baseball bat from behind the door and followed me back to my room. The window was wide open. Glass on the floor. Blood smeared across the sill. Whoever it was had vanished. The police arrived 15 minutes later. I told them everything about the photos, the rides, the weird questions, the night at the dumpster. My parents gave them his name and address from his job application. 2 hours later, the police called back. They'd found Liam at his apartment. He was bleeding, trying to wrap his arms in a towel. They found the knife in his backpack, glass wedged into the soles of his shoes. He didn't deny it. Said he just wanted to talk, that I'd misunderstood. In his room, they found more photos, some from earlier in the summer. A spiral notebook with notes about my work schedule, my family's cars, what time lights went off at night. He told the officers I was sending mixed signals, that I was playing hard to get. He said he'd been planning to come in through my window for days, just waiting for the right moment. The detective told me I was lucky I woke up. Liam was charged with breaking and entering, stalking, and attempted assault. There was too much evidence to argue. The knife, the blood, the photos, the notebook. He pled guilty. He got 12 years. I never saw him again, but I had to testify, had to describe the photos, the late-night rides, the way he stood outside the back door like he was waiting for something. The judge asked if I felt safe. I said, not really. After the trial, I went back to work for the last few weeks of summer, but I never rode with anyone again. When I left for college, my parents replaced my window with a reinforced one that locked from the inside. People like to joke that hotels are haunted, that all those stale, beige hallways are hiding secrets. Ghosts mostly. The old kind, dead honeymooners, murdered businessmen, weird kids with empty eyes and no footsteps. That kind of thing. But what I've learned is that sometimes, the worst hauntings don't come from the past. They come from people who are still alive. My name is Dirin, and I've stayed in a lot of hotels. Not for anything glamorous. I'm a territory rep for a surgical device company, which is just a fancy way of saying I drive around to clinics and try to sell scalpels to people with god complexes. I'm on the road more than I'm not. I've got status with every major chain and enough points to live rent-free if the food wasn't so depressing. I used to like it, the anonymity, the detachment. I don't anymore. It started in August, in a hotel off the 55 in a town you've never heard of. I checked in late after a 6-hour drive. The place was a chain, decently clean, and I'd stayed there twice before. I remembered the girl at the front desk, heavy eyeliner, name tag said Janelai. She asked if I wanted a bottle of water and an upgrade. I said yes to both. My room was on the 3rd floor, end of the hall. I remember that because I like end rooms. Fewer walls to share. I sleep light. Always have. No music, no TV. I need silence. I showered. Read a little. Locked the deadbolt and the top latch. I always double-check them. I even push a chair under the knob if the hotel looks sketchy. This one didn't. This one was normal. When I left in the morning to drive to my appointment, I noticed the Do Not Disturb sign hanging on my door handle. That would have been fine, except I didn't put it there. I always check before I leave. I don't use those signs. Housekeeping doesn't bother me, and the Do Not Disturb signs always remind me of crime documentaries. Still, I figured it was an honest mistake. Maybe I brushed it on while opening the door. Maybe someone else put it there as a prank. Whatever. I left. The day was long. Meetings, bad coffee, a half-lukewarm chicken Caesar wrap from a gas station. I got back around 7:30 exhausted. The room was untouched. Bed still made. Towels still damp. Housekeeping hadn't come. That's when it clicked. They hadn't come because the sign was up. Someone or something made sure they didn't go in. I called the front desk. Janelai answered. I asked if housekeeping had skipped me or if I missed the hours. She said the room had a Do Not Disturb flag in the system, so they left it alone. I told her I never requested that. She paused, then said, "That's strange." It was marked manually at the desk. Someone came down and asked for it. I froze. I asked if she remembered who. She said no, but that the person had used my last name. Even confirmed the room number. I didn't sleep that night. I sat in bed, watching the hallway from the peephole. Every time I blinked, I expected to see a silhouette. But there was nothing. The next day, I left early and did what any paranoid woman with an expense account would do. I switched hotels. Didn't even check out, just abandoned the room and drove to the next town. New hotel, different brand. But the sign followed me. Second night, same thing. Came back to find the Do Not Disturb tag swinging from my door like someone had just hung it. This time, I went straight to the desk and asked who had been in the room. The manager, a soft-spoken guy named Alec, looked confused. He said the system showed a D&D flag placed at 1:14 p.m. Again, manually marked. Again, under my name. I told him that was impossible. He checked the footage. Said he'd get back to me. The next morning, he called me down and showed me the tape. It was me. Or rather, it looked like me. Same jacket, same height, same walk. But the video quality was grainy, and the hair was tied back the way I never wore it. The person walked up to the front desk, leaned in, and said something. Then handed over an ID card. Alex said he hadn't seen the actual badge, just that it looked real enough. When I asked if I could see a close-up of the face, he said the camera had glitched right at that moment. Of course it had. I called my best friend, Mina. Told her what happened. She said, "That's some single white female shit." I laughed. But only once. Because I hadn't told Mina where I was staying. And somehow, someone else knew. The next 3 hotels were the same. Different cities, different brands. But every time I left the room, the sign would appear. Sometimes before I came back. Sometimes after, as if someone knew I was watching. I started asking for rooms under fake names. Always used different credit cards, corporate, personal, even a prepaid one I picked up in a gas station. I deleted my travel apps. Booked by phone. Wrote nothing down. Still, the signs came. Sometimes they were tucked inside the room. On the desk. On the pillow. On the inside of the door. I left a trap one night. Taped a thread to the doorframe and used my phone to record a time lapse. When I got back, the sign was on the door. But the thread was unbroken. The footage? Stopped at 2:13 a.m. Restarted at 2:21. That missing 8 minutes still sits in my mind like a stone in my throat. I should have quit traveling. I should have told the police. But there's this thing that happens when you feel crazy. You start hiding it. Not because you don't want help, but because you're afraid no one will believe you. Or worse, that they will, and you'll never be left alone again. The next hotel was my breaking point. It was a conference center in Galleon City. Tall, sterile, too many elevators. I checked in under a fake name, even Arlo. Gave a burner number. I even asked for a room with no connecting door. The clerk handed me the key card and said, "We've already got you set up. Your coworker checked in earlier." I blinked. "What coworker?" She hesitated. "He said he was part of your event team." Showed ID. claimed you wanted adjoining rooms. I asked to see the ID. She said she couldn't disclose guest info. I demanded to see the security footage instead. She called security. They took me into the back office. I watched the screen. It wasn't a co-worker. It was my ex, Talon. We hadn't spoken in nearly 8 months. We'd ended things ugly. He didn't like when I said no. Didn't like when I called his jealousy what it was. Pathetic and controlling. He once said, "You don't understand what you're walking away from." I told him that was the point. And now here he was, on screen, wearing a hotel uniform, sliding a key card across the front desk, smiling, not at the staff, at the camera, like he knew I'd be watching. They moved me floors, brought in a hotel cop to walk the hallway. I sat in bed with a steak knife from room service and a desk lamp left on all night. I kept whispering to myself, he can't be in here. He can't be in here. But at 2:26 a.m., I heard my door handle twitch. Just once. Then silence. The camera I set up didn't catch a thing. But I know he was there. I left before dawn. The police were notified. A restraining order was filed. They found proof of him impersonating staff using fake credentials. Said he used to work hotel maintenance years ago. Still had old polos and name tags. Said it wasn't technically illegal unless he used force or entered a room without consent. I don't sleep in hotels anymore. Not without wedging a chair under the knob and leaving something loud by the door. I tape every vent, check every mirror. He hasn't been caught yet. I'm a realist. That's not code for boring. I just don't do ghosts, astrology, or energies. I believe in data, patterns, what I can measure. That probably makes me sound like a walking BuzzFeed quiz titled, "Are you emotionally unavailable?" But I'm fine with that. The world has enough people chasing vibes. Someone needs to check the Wi-Fi password and back up the hard drives. Which is exactly why I never expected my own phone to turn against me. My name is Senna, and I don't scare easy. But I haven't slept in 6 days, not properly. And if you think that sounds dramatic, you've never woken up to audio of someone breathing in your bedroom while you were asleep. Let me explain. It started with a stupid app. Not some cursed file from the dark web. Just a well-designed, AI-powered sleep tracker called Sleeper. It was trending for a while. Track your dreams, see your REM cycles, record your nocturnal noises. That kind of thing. I downloaded it because I'd been having nightmares. Nothing paranormal. Just the usual stress dreams. Teeth falling out, missing a flight, accidentally texting my boss something filthy. The app worked. Too well. It had this feature that recorded sound whenever movement or noise was detected during sleep. I thought it was cool to hear myself muttering nonsense like peanut snakes or unplug the moon. Made me laugh. Gave me something to send to my friends. Until I heard the whisper. It was the 4th night. The recording started like all the others. A little static, some rustling as I turned over. Then, clear as anything, my name. Senna. Male voice. Close. Too close. I sat up so fast I gave myself a cramp. The timestamp was 3:13 a.m. I checked the door. Still locked. Windows shut. No signs of entry. I figured maybe it was an audio glitch. Maybe it picked up a sound from the hallway outside. Thin walls, weird acoustics, it happens. I told myself that. Until it happened again. Different night. 3:11 a.m. Same voice. Don't hang up. Except I wasn't on a call. The app was the only thing running. The phone was on airplane mode. I played it again. Don't hang up. It was a whisper. But firm. Like someone giving instructions through clenched teeth. I stopped using the app for 2 nights. Deleted the old recordings. Turned off my phone at night. Then the dreams came. Vivid, too vivid. Dreams where I woke up, but couldn't move. Dreams where I was being watched. Where someone was inches from my face. Smiling. Not cruelly, but like they knew me. I chalked it up to stress. Anxiety. I've had my share of breakdowns. My ex, Leor, used to say I intellectualized my feelings until they died of loneliness. He wasn't wrong, but he also once installed a GPS tracker on my bike without asking, just in case. So his judgment's questionable, which is what made me think of him again. Because the voice in the recordings? It sounded just like him. Same soft rasp. Same fake calm tone he used when he was trying not to snap. I hadn't spoken to Leor in almost a year, since I ended things and changed my number. Last I knew, he was working tech support for some shady crypto startup and ghosting therapy like it owed him money. I did something stupid. I downloaded the app again. Sleeper had a cloud history feature. I didn't realize that. It pulled back my old data. The recordings I thought were gone weren't. They came back. There were more than I remembered. A lot more. Each one had a timestamp around 3:11 to 3:15 a.m. Each one featured a whisper, a rustle, or the faint sound of something breathing. Not snoring. Not animal-like. Intentional. I sat there in my dark apartment, scrolling through 37 separate entries that had never been reviewed. And then I found it. The last one. 3:13 a.m. The recording started with the usual shuffle. Then Lior's voice. Clear. Confident. Calm. I told you I wouldn't leave. I paused. Rewound. Played it again. Same cadence. Same tone. This wasn't from our old calls. I hadn't backed those up. I hadn't recorded them. And I know he didn't say that to me in person. He'd never been back in my apartment since the day he moved out. He wasn't even supposed to know where I live now. I opened the app settings, dug into the metadata. The audio wasn't edited. It was captured live. And the file creation matched the date I'd woken up feeling like someone had been near my bed. I remember that night. I'd even lit a candle because the darkness felt heavier than usual. I went to the police. Told them I thought someone had broken in. They asked if anything was missing. It wasn't. They asked if I had footage. I didn't. They said I could file a report, but without damage or evidence, it wouldn't go anywhere. I showed them the audio. The officer raised an eyebrow and said, "Could be a prank. Deepfakes are getting good these days." That night, I turned everything off. Phone, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, everything. I wedged a chair under the doorknob. Slept with pepper spray under my pillow. Still woke up at 3:13 a.m. Heart racing. Breath shallow. I sat up, expecting to see him standing there. But there was nothing. The next morning, there was a message scrawled on my bathroom mirror in soap. Just 2 words. Missed me? I lost it. I left the apartment. Stayed at my friend Halia's place. She lives in a tiny walk-up with locks on the door and a chihuahua that hates everyone. I didn't tell her the full story. Just said my ex was being weird again. She handed me tea and a baseball bat. I slept better that night, until 3:12 a.m., when her dog started growling at the window. Halia didn't hear it. She sleeps with earplugs. I got up, checked the glass. There was a post-it on the outside, bright orange, like the ones Lior used to leave around the apartment when he was feeling romantic. It said, "Still tracking, still listening." I peeled it off with trembling fingers. Went back inside, deleted every app on my phone, factory reset it, bought a new one, switched providers, got a VPN, started using an old Nokia burner for calls. And yet last night I woke up at 3:14 a.m. with my phone recording again. A new one, even though Sleeper was gone. This time, the voice didn't whisper. It laughed, and then said, "You forgot to check the cloud." I didn't even finish listening. I smashed the phone, bought a flip phone, burned the SIM. I still don't sleep well, because when I close my eyes, I remember what he once said to me, during a fight back when things were still fixable. He said, "People think the worst thing is being watched. But it's not. It's not being able to prove you were." And now I get it, because if someone records you while you sleep, if they hide in your life like background noise, if they whisper instead of scream, there's nothing to point to, nothing to show. Just your own pulse racing at 3:13 a.m., waiting for a voice that might already be inside your head. I'm not the kind of person who normally tells stories. I write them down, quietly, under pseudonyms. I'm the ghostwriter your favorite self-help guru hired to make them sound like they've read a book in the last 10 years. I structure things for a living. Arcs. Logic. Clean through lines. So it's especially disturbing that I can't make sense of what happened to me. My name's Selim. I don't expect you to remember it. No one does. Which is probably why what happened worked so well. When no one knows you, you can be rewritten without resistance. I was in a long-term relationship for 3 years with someone named Rel. Real name? Doubtful. She claimed it was short for something. Never told me what. She was an artist, collage, mood boards, projection art, installation work. Her medium was attention, and I was her first draft. Things were beautiful, strange, slightly manic. And for a while, I thrived under her gaze. Until I didn't. It's easy to get addicted to being watched when you've spent most of your life overlooked. She made me feel curated, selected. But the thing about being on someone's wall is eventually you realize you're nailed there. We broke up. Not messily. Just suddenly. Like a string snapping. I woke up one morning and realized every version of myself I saw through her was fictional. I didn't love her anymore. I loved who she told me I was. So I left. Quietly. No drama. Just a letter, a returned key, and a box of her things delivered via courier. I deleted my socials. All of them. Email too. Got a new number. Changed apartments. Left no forwarding address. I was gone. I thought I was safe. The first pinned image showed up 2 months later. It was taped to the inside of my front door. Small, 4 inches by 4. Glossy paper. A color printout. It was a photo of roasted sweet potatoes, arranged on a blue ceramic plate, garnished with dill. The lighting was golden hour. I didn't understand at first. It looked like a Pinterest save. A recipe maybe. Something from a cooking blog. But then I remembered I had made that dish. Once. For Rel. 2 years earlier. I'd taken a photo. Posted it on my now deleted Instagram. I stared at the image for a long time, trying to rationalize. It wasn't a photo I currently had. It wasn't on my phone. It wasn't online anymore. But it had been mine. And now it was taped to my door. No note. No signature. Just a tiny pin stuck through the top, like it belonged to some invisible bulletin board I wasn't supposed to see. I told myself it was a coincidence, that I was overreacting. That night, I went to bed with my phone camera recording the hallway outside my apartment. Just in case. Nothing happened. But the next morning, there was another. Same size. Different image. A photo of a t-shirt. Pale lavender with faded ink. A geometric pattern on the chest. It was mine. Or had been. It was the shirt I'd worn the night I read my writing aloud at Rel's gallery opening. She'd said I looked like a poet who accidentally joined a cult. I hadn't seen that shirt in months. Probably thrown away. But here it was, immortalized in a tiny printed snapshot. Pinned. The pins disturbed me more than the photos. They weren't thumbtacks or pushpins. They were metal. Old-fashioned sewing pins. Silver with little matte black heads. Perfectly centered. Perfectly straight. I began collecting them in a shoebox under my bed. Didn't tell anyone. Not even my brother. I felt absurd. But a part of me knew already that this wasn't random. That it had style. The third image came while I was out. I returned home after a grocery run and found it placed on my kitchen counter. That was the worst one yet. Because I always lock my door. Always. The image was a close-up of a hand. Holding a mug. My mug. An ugly, chipped ceramic thing I bought from a flea market. And the hand wasn't mine. It was hers. I could tell by the tattoo, a line of Roman numerals down the index finger. A date I never asked about. I stared at that photo until I stopped breathing. She'd been inside. Not just recently, but while I was living there. She was curating me again. I didn't call the police. I should have. But what do you say? That someone broke into your home and left you memories? There was no damage. No forced entry. No fingerprints. Just a growing collection of images. The next was a meme. An old one. A cartoon fox staring into a void with the caption, "Me pretending I didn't see that red flag." I had once sent that to her as a joke after we fought about something stupid. She had laughed and said, "Too late, I already forgave your sins." I found that one on my bathroom mirror. The pin went through the glass. Not into it. Through. As if it had been pressed into a wall behind it that didn't exist. I started keeping all the lights on. Put masking tape on the windows. Set up motion sensors that lit up my hallway at night. She never came again while I was awake. But every morning, a new pin would greet me. Each image was more personal than the last. One showed my nightstand with the book I had finished the previous week. Another was of the exact breakfast I had made that morning, before I ate it. Not a replica. A photo. The final straw came 3 nights ago. I woke up to find my own face, taped to the wall above my bed. Not a mirror. A photo. Me. Asleep. Mouth slightly open. Hand curled near my cheek. I had never seen that photo taken. Never had a camera in my room. I tore it down. I screamed. And for the first time, I spoke aloud to a room I knew was listening. "What do you want from me?" And I swear to you, I heard a whisper from the hallway. Not an answer. Just a hum. A melody I recognized. Rel used to hum it when she was working. Low. Off-key. But consistent. I packed a duffel bag that night. Left before dawn. I'm staying at my brother's place now. He's in the Navy. Keeps a gun by the bed, and watches reruns of ancient action movies all night. It feels safe. Not safe, but safer. Still, 2 nights ago, I opened his fridge to grab a drink. There was a note on the orange juice. It was a printed image. A collage this time, made of cut-out letters from magazines. It said, "You aren't you yet. I'm not done." And it was pinned, perfectly centered. Black head, silver shaft, the same kind I still find sometimes. Inside books, taped to mirrors, placed under my pillow. The first time my phone switched into red mode, I didn't even know it was a thing. It was a Tuesday mid-morning, right after I'd finished showering. I noticed the screen was dim but active, recording. But the camera app wasn't open. There was no red dot, no shutter sound, no preview window, just nothing. It was subtle enough that I thought I was imagining it. I tapped the screen. It flickered, then went black. When I unlocked it again, everything looked normal. But later that night, when I plugged it into my laptop, there was a new folder. Hidden, nested 6 layers deep in system files I'd never touched. Inside were 3 videos. Silent. Grayscale. No thumbnails. Just labeled with timestamps I didn't recognize. I opened the first one. It was footage of me. In bed. Sleeping. At first, I assumed it was from the night before, but it wasn't. The bedding was different. I was wearing the pink tank I threw away weeks ago. And the angle, God, the angle. It wasn't from the foot of the bed or from the dresser. It was from the nightstand. From my phone. I sat frozen in my chair, watching myself turn slightly, pull the blanket up, breathe. My face so close. Lips parted. Completely unaware. I didn't remember filming it. I didn't authorize it. I lived alone. My name is Riva. I work in tech support at a mobile service provider. I troubleshoot data loss, phone swaps, overheating. I'm not paranoid about security because I understand it. I know the permissions. I know how apps access your camera, your microphone, your contacts. There's nothing mystical about it, which made it worse. Because this wasn't spyware. It wasn't an app. It was part of the phone. I opened the second video. Same angle. Same lighting. But I wasn't asleep in this one. I was touching myself. Not in some performative way. Just quietly. Naturally. A private moment. A moment I didn't even remember doing. The idea that someone had watched this, watched me without me knowing. I couldn't breathe. I ejected the phone, deleted the files, and checked the software logs. Nothing. No third-party apps. No root access. No malware. Just a quiet little switch buried in the accessibility menu, under experimental modes. Red mode, enabled. That's all it said. No description. No support articles. I disabled it. That night, I kept my phone outside the room. Locked in a drawer. Face down. Wrapped in foil, because I wasn't taking chances. Still couldn't sleep. Still felt the lens on my skin. Still imagined the quiet hum of being watched. The next day, I brought the phone into work and ran every diagnostic I could. I dumped the OS. I rebuilt the architecture from a clean wipe. When it rebooted, the red mode toggle was still there. Still enabled by default. Still undocumented. I asked my coworkers. No one had heard of it. I checked forums, Reddit, dev sites, even old boards in the back alleys of hacker spaces. Nothing. Until I found one thread. Posted 6 months earlier. Username, proxy_89. The post title, hidden recording feature in certain retail devices? The post read, "My girlfriend has been acting weird lately. Paranoid. Said her phone recorded her sleeping." I checked it. Found videos. Red mode buried under accessibility. She swears she didn't enable it. I disabled it. Next day it turned back on. She dumped the phone eventually. Switched to a burner. Here's the twist. I work at the store she bought it from. I know who handled her upgrade. It was me. The post was flagged. Comments disabled. The user account deleted. I screen capped the entire thread. Because that's when I realized who had upgraded my phone. Arden. Not Arden. Not Arlen. Arden. My ex. We'd dated for 11 months. Ended things after I found his spare key hidden in the tank of my toilet. Yeah, the toilet. He said it was in case of emergencies, which apparently included jerking off to videos of me asleep. He worked at a phone store, had access to my account, knew my PIN, knew my upgrade window. I remembered now, he'd offered to help me get the best deal when I changed providers. I thought it was a kind gesture, a parting gift, but he'd sold me a pre-modified device. custom firmware, backdoor access. And somehow, the red mode wasn't connected to the cloud. It was storing everything locally. Every moment, every moan, every shift of fabric against skin. I wanted to throw up. I contacted law enforcement. They said unless I could prove he accessed the files or distributed them, they couldn't do anything. The law doesn't protect you from being watched, only from being touched. And I wasn't even sure anymore if the two were separate, because then I found the fourth video. I don't remember recording it, but it was recent, same comforter, same lighting. I was asleep again, but I was whispering. I turned up the volume, listened carefully. I was saying his name, over and over, softly, like I was dreaming of him. And then at the very end, barely audible, another voice. I'm closer now. I backed up the footage to an encrypted drive and smashed the phone with a hammer. Got a new device. From a kiosk I'd never used before. Use cash. Registered under a fake name. No backups. No transfers. No facial recognition. Burner SIM. I sleep with it in the freezer now. I sleep with the lights on. But every so often when I dream, I still say his name. And sometimes, I wake up with the memory of being filmed. Even though the new phone is off. Even though I unplug everything. Even though I switched apartments. Because this wasn't just about the device. This was about permission. And the worst... I met Brad at a friend's birthday party, of all places. He wasn't my type, flannel shirt, hiking boots, that whole I live for the outdoors vibe. But he was polite, asked interesting questions, and didn't stare at my chest the whole time. He texted me the next day, and kept texting. Thoughtful messages. Not too frequent. Just enough charm to pull me in. A week later, he asked if I wanted to go on a hike. I know this trail up in the hills, he said. Private. Gorgeous views. No tourists. I hesitated. How long is the hike? An hour up, but we can take our time. I'll bring snacks. It sounded harmless. And I liked the idea of being somewhere quiet after the crush of city noise all week. So I agreed. He picked me up on Saturday in a spotless old Jeep. Said he'd packed fruit, granola, and something sweet for the top of the trail. I laughed and asked if that was a euphemism. He smirked but didn't answer. The trail was beautiful, I'll give him that. Golden light filtered through the trees, and the air smelled like pine and warm stone. He walked close beside me, occasionally brushing his hand along my arm, my waist. It was subtle but deliberate. You ever hike with someone you're into? He asked halfway up. I shrugged. Not really. He smiled. First time for everything. When we reached the top, he laid out a small blanket and opened the snacks. We sat side by side, drinking lukewarm bottled water and watching the sun start to dip behind the trees. That's when the conversation shifted. I like that you're different, he said, brushing a crumb off my knee. Different how? You just seem untouched. I blinked. What? He looked at me very seriously. I don't usually date girls who've been with other guys. It messes things up. The bond. The trust. I froze. Are you saying you only date virgins? He nodded. It's not weird. It's just what I value. Purity matters. I laughed, an awkward, startled sound. That's a lot. Then he asked, you are, right? My stomach dropped. No, I said. I'm not. He went still. The air went heavy. He stared at me like I'd just confessed to a crime. You should have told me. I didn't know it was a requirement, I said, standing up. It's not something I bring up in small talk. His jaw tightened. I wouldn't have wasted my time. You mean this trauma-bonding hike? Don't mock me, he snapped. I let you into my space. I trusted you. It's a date, Brad. Not a vow of chastity. He stood now too, looming slightly. You think it doesn't matter what you've done with your body. You think it doesn't affect how I see you. I backed up a step. I think you need therapy. He stepped closer. You lied by omission. That's dishonesty. I pulled my phone from my pocket. I'm leaving. Get out of my way. No signal here, he said, voice low. You think that little device is going to save you? I raised my voice. My location is being tracked. My roommate knows where I am. If I don't check in... He stopped. His eyes flicked to my phone. I kept going, bluffing hard. She has the trail name. Your license plate. Everything. We stared at each other in silence for a long moment. Then he stepped back. Unbelievable, he muttered. Girls like you ruin everything. I didn't respond. I just walked. Fast. I didn't look back until I reached the base of the trail, where a family with 2 kids was just starting their hike. I waved at them like I knew them. Brad never came down behind me. I don't know if he stayed up there or took another path, but I never saw him again. I blocked his number that night, reported his profile, told my friends, and I stopped apologizing for not fitting into someone else's fantasy. Because if your love has conditions, it isn't love. When I moved into apartment 2B, I didn't think much about the past. I just wanted a clean start. No drama, no noise, no exes. No her. The place was old but charming. Hardwood floors that clicked when you walked too fast. A cracked window frame that whistled on windy nights. A stove that looked like it had survived multiple wars and somehow still lit on the first try. Perfect. The building was 3 stories, tucked behind a row of sad, sagging townhouses and an abandoned dog grooming shop. The front steps were crooked, the lobby smelled like wet stone, and the mailboxes had no locks. Still, it was cheap, and the landlord accepted cash without asking too many questions. I didn't complain. I was ready to forget the past, which is probably why it didn't forget me. My name's Ivan. I'm 29. I used to think I was good at keeping things separate, life, work, relationships, that if I just packed the boxes neatly and labeled the lids, nothing would bleed through. I learned the hard way that people don't work like storage containers, especially not people like Varel. We were together for a little under 2 years. She was magnetic, the kind of person you wanted to impress just so she'd look at you like you mattered. But she was also unpredictable. One minute, she'd be laughing in your lap, drawing shapes on your neck with her finger. The next, she'd go silent for hours and stare at the wall like it had insulted her. We weren't good for each other, but she didn't take the breakup well. The restraining order didn't stick. The cops said she hadn't done anything substantial enough. The night she showed up outside my building and left a necklace on the hood of my car wasn't enough. The time she called my mom pretending to be a debt collector wasn't enough. The note she slipped under my door that said "still warm" wasn't enough. So I moved. Far. I didn't tell anyone where. I changed my number, deleted my socials, and started using a different name on lease documents. 2B was supposed to be peace. And for a little while, it was, until I found the first message. It was carved into the underside of the bathroom cabinet shelf. Not visible unless you ducked under the sink with a flashlight. It was written in pencil, not carved. Still fresh. She's watching you again. That was it. I froze. Checked the lock. Stared into the mirror. Tried to laugh. It didn't work. I told myself it was an old message. From some other paranoid tenant. I covered it with duct tape and forgot about it. Until a week later, when I went to change a light bulb in the hallway and found another one. Written inside the base of the ceiling fixture. I had to remove the frosted cover to see it. I was you once. Same handwriting. Tiny. Cursive. Neat. Not angry. Not crazy. Just matter of fact. I didn't sleep that night. The next day, I asked the landlord, some guy named Haldren with nicotine fingers and a voice like broken gravel, if anyone had ever complained about the unit. He looked at me without blinking and said, "It's a quiet building." I pressed. He shrugged. "You get some notes in the walls, that's just the city breathing." I didn't know what that meant. Still don't. I stopped asking questions. But the messages didn't stop. I found one behind the fridge. Another inside the linen closet door. They weren't all warnings. Some were observations. You hum when you wash dishes. You check the lock 3 times, not 2. You hold your breath during thunder. They weren't just messages. They were reminders. Someone knew me. Someone was tracking me. And they'd been here before. I started documenting them. Taking photos. Mapping the apartment. 23 messages total, all in hidden places. Not visible during a walkthrough. Only if you lived there. And that's when I realized something else. They weren't written all at once. Some of the handwriting looked newer. Fresher. Like someone had added them recently. I checked the building records. Didn't find much. But I did find a tenant list from a few years ago. Apartment 2B, occupied by A.V. Soren. Varel. She'd lived here before. Long before we met. Before I knew her name. Before she ever accidentally bumped into me at that bookstore. Before the curated meetings. The shared playlists. The inside jokes. She'd lived here first. And now, I had moved into her memory. That's when things escalated. I started hearing things. Not voices, just sounds. Shifts in the walls. Whispers of motion behind vents. The hallway light flickering at 3:14 a.m., even though the bulb was new. One night, I came home to find the front door slightly ajar. Nothing was taken. Nothing moved. Except one thing. On my pillow was a photo. Of me. Asleep. Same position. Same sheets. Same open mouth. It wasn't a printed photo. It was Polaroid. Still smelled of chemicals. The corner had handwriting. You looked more peaceful before. I didn't leave that night. I should have. But I didn't. I locked the door. Bolted the windows. Sat on the couch with a kitchen knife and waited for morning. At dawn, I heard a soft knock. Not at the door. At the wall. 3 taps. Same rhythm. Same spot as the first message. I pressed my ear to it. Heard breathing. No voices. Just breathing. I kicked a hole in the drywall. Found insulation. And another note. This one laminated. You can leave. But you'll still live in me. I moved out 3 days later. Didn't break the lease. Didn't ask for a refund. Didn't even pack everything. It started with the keychain. Not just any keychain, her keychain. The one with the chipped blue ceramic charm shaped like a fox. I bought it for her at a street fair the first month we dated. She clipped it onto her house keys, and I remember she said it was too ugly to lose. She laughed when she said it, and for a second I thought she meant me. After we broke up, I never saw it again. I assumed she threw it out with everything else that reminded her of me. That's what most people do. They burn the past or box it up for the next unlucky person to find. But 2 months ago, that same keychain was hanging from the light switch in my kitchen. No note. No message. Just hanging there like it had always belonged to the apartment. I hadn't seen her in nearly a year. Not in person. Not online. We had a clean break. Or so I thought. My name is Leaf. That's not important. What matters is that I keep a very ordered life. I'm not one of those messy people who loses things and blames the furniture. I keep my toothbrush at a 45-degree angle from the sink. I align my shoes by brand. I vacuum the inside of my microwave. So when something appears where it shouldn't, I notice. The Fox keychain? I threw it in the trash. The very next day, it was back, this time on my coffee table. No one has a spare key to my place. I changed the locks after she left. I started writing things down. Times. Places. Taking photos before I left for work. Checking again when I got home. I thought maybe I was sleepwalking, that stress was making me reconstruct old items. But then came the hoodie. Her hoodie. Faded plum, a tear under the left armpit. She wore it constantly, especially when she stayed the night. I had forgotten what it smelled like until I touched it again. Faint perfume and old detergent. It was folded and left on the edge of my bed. That was when I stopped pretending this was a coincidence. I checked every window, every door. I bought a motion-activated camera and placed it in the living room, angled at the hallway that led to my bedroom and kitchen. I installed a door sensor and started locking the bedroom from the inside. The camera was set to notify me of movement. One night, at exactly 2:37 a.m., I woke to silence. No alerts. Just this deep, restless unease. I opened the app. The footage from 2:30 to 2:45 was corrupted. Every night after that, same thing. The same blackout at 2:37 a.m. I contacted the manufacturer. They told me it was likely interference. I asked what kind. They said it would have to be localized electromagnetic disruption, which only happens if someone is tampering with the device directly. That night, I sat up with a baseball bat and a flashlight and waited. I didn't hear a thing. No steps. No clicks. Nothing. But in the morning, there was a box at the foot of my bed. Unwrapped. Unlabeled. Inside were objects I had given her during the relationship. A candle I made her, a necklace with my birthstone, and most unsettling, a short story I had written her for our anniversary, one she swore she lost during a move. It was burned around the edges. Like someone had almost destroyed it, but decided it was worth keeping after all. I moved out the next day. Packed light. Left furniture, artwork, even books behind. I didn't care. I signed a 6-month lease in a new apartment complex with gated entry and a security guard. I didn't list a forwarding address. I didn't post about it online. But the gifts followed me. 1 week after moving in, I came home to find a dried flower pressed between the pages of my new journal. I didn't recognize it until I flipped back to an old photo saved on my phone. It was one I'd taken of her bedside table, back when things were good. The same flower. Pressed. Dried. Preserved. It was hers. I checked the footage. Again, 2:37 a.m., corrupted. I bought a new camera. Different brand. Hidden this time. No lights, no visible lens. The next night, I stayed at a friend's place. Left the camera running. I came back the next morning and checked the footage. At first, it showed nothing but a dark room. Then, at exactly 2:36 a.m., the door opened. 2 figures entered. One was her. The other was older. Taller. Long dark hair streaked with gray. Her mother. They carried a box between them. It was labeled in black Sharpie. It had my name on it. I paused the video and stared at the image. Her face was soft, calm, like she was helping her daughter move into a dorm room. My ex, Callus, was smiling. They opened the box. Removed a framed photo. It was of me. Sleeping. I don't remember that photo ever being taken. I didn't watch the rest. I deleted it. Not because I didn't want proof, but because I didn't want her to know I saw it. I didn't want to feed whatever performance they were staging. I filed a police report. They asked for evidence. I told them I had none. They said the same thing they always say. We can't do anything until something happens. But something had already happened. They were inside. I left that apartment 2 nights ago. I'm in a motel now, 5 towns over. The kind of place where the windows don't quite close and the tap leaks constantly. I brought nothing with me. And still this morning, when I unzipped my duffel bag to get a clean shirt, I found a tiny ceramic fox. Its tail chipped off. The ugly ones are the hardest to lose. We met at an open mic night. I was there with friends, sipping a warm gin and tonic, and pretending I wasn't nervous about reading my poetry. David took the stage 2 people before me. He read something short, sharp, and a little too confident. I don't remember the poem, just the way he looked while performing, like he was used to being listened to. Afterward, I was outside catching my breath when he stepped up beside me. "You read beautifully," he said. I thanked him, flattered and flustered. He had a quiet voice, the kind you lean into. His eyes were dark, and he wore a threadbare hoodie like it was a uniform. We talked for 30 minutes in the cold. He told me he was a high school English teacher, said poetry kept him sane. I told him I was between jobs and figuring things out. "You've got a calm energy," he said. "I like that." We exchanged numbers. By the end of the week, we'd gone on 2 dates, and by the 3rd, we hooked up in his apartment. It was clean but lived in, with stacks of books on every surface and a record player spinning old jazz in the background. He made me tea afterward. Didn't rush. Didn't push. He was thoughtful in bed, attentive, even sweet. Not the kind of guy you expect to have anything to hide. We kept seeing each other. Once or twice a week. Always at his place or out in the city. He never asked to see mine. Never pushed to meet my friends. I didn't mind. I liked how insulated it felt, like we existed in some quiet bubble where everything was just about us. One night, about a month in, we were curled on his couch after sex, half-dressed and lazy with red wine. He asked about my worst date. I told him about a guy who brought his mom to dinner. He laughed, then said, "You want to hear something worse?" "Sure." He leaned back, swirled the wine in his glass. "Last year, I had a weird thing with a student." I blinked. "Wait, what?" She'd graduated already. Wasn't my student anymore. But yeah, it happened. We hooked up a few times. I sat up straighter. "How old was she?" 18, he said. "Barely. But legal." I didn't say anything. "She was the one who came onto me," he added. "You know how intense girls get when they think you're the only person who understands them?" I stared at the floor, trying to keep my voice steady. "And your school never found out?" He shrugged. "There were rumors." She got dramatic near the end. But I denied everything. Nothing came of it. I set down my glass. My stomach flipped. "You don't think that's a little messed up?" He looked at me, eyes suddenly sharp. "I didn't groom her, if that's what you're thinking. She was obsessed." I just gave in. That's when the room changed for me. Everything that had felt quiet and safe now felt suffocating. I left early that night, said I had a headache. He kissed my cheek and said, "Don't judge me too hard. You don't know the whole story." But I didn't need more details. I knew enough. The next morning, I called a friend who worked in education policy. Told her what I'd heard. She connected me with someone at the district office. I filed a report. 3 days later, I got a call from a detective. I gave a full statement. They said it wasn't the first time they'd heard David's name. He was placed on administrative leave within a week. I never heard from him again. I don't know what happened with the investigation. I stopped checking. But I still think about that moment on the couch, the ease with which he told me, the flicker of satisfaction behind his eyes when he described her obsession. And I think about how close I came to missing it. How easy it is to confuse charm with character. How quickly something consensual can unravel into something predatory. I wasn't the victim, but I still had a choice. And I made it.